let me just tell you guys, right now it is 4 a.m. Tuesday morning in Tokyo. Brian Stann is in Tokyo right now, gearing up for his big fight against Wanderlei Silva on Saturday. It airs Saturday night here in the United States. Sunday morning, actually, in Tokyo. A lot of confusion about this. This is going to air like a UFC pay-per-view. 10 p.m. Eastern, main card. The prelims and whatnot will be on Facebook. There'll be a preview show on Fuel an hour before at 9 p.m. But this is the same old deal. I know we've gotten used to Macau and London and these international cards, them being different time zones, but this is going to air the exact same way as a pay-per-view. 7:30 p.m. Facebook prelims, 9 o'clock pre-show on Fuel, and then 10 o'clock main card on Fuel. So Brian Stann is over there right now. He's going to fight Wanderlei Silva in the main event, Saitama Super Arena, and it's an unbelievable card. It really is one of the best free cards that the UFC has hooked us up with in a while. We'll talk about it in a bit. For now, let us welcome Brian Stann, 4 a.m. in Tokyo. I'm blown away. I'm humbled by this moment, Brian, that you would wake up at 4 a.m. to be on my show. Thank you so much.
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. It's the least I could do, buddy. We worked together for a while now, and this is a great way to promote the fight. There's been a lot of fights that have been kind of back to back right now, and I think this card may have been forgotten about a little bit, but they really put together a great card for free TV.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of the best free cards the UFC has put out in a while. It's top to bottom, unbelievable. And let me ask you, because the fight is taking place in the morning on Sunday, and I was talking to Misha Tate about this for her boyfriend, Brian Caraway, they're actually going to stick on, Eastern time zone because they don't want to get all messed up. Are you doing the same?
I'm not. I train in the mornings and I train in the afternoons. I train in the evenings. So I will probably fight around 1:30 in the afternoon, which is really just fine for me. So for me, wherever I go, I just start training at the time I'm going to fight every day, the week of the fight once I get there.
How long have you been in Tokyo for?
So I just got in. I was supposed to get in yesterday, or actually I got in yesterday. I was supposed to get in a day earlier, but there were some issues with my flight. But I landed last night about 4 p.m. Tokyo time, and then I went to bed about 8:30 p.m., woke up about 3 a.m., and then I'll probably go back and take a little nap, around 4:30, 5 a.m., and then train this afternoon.
Is that enough time to get acclimated to the time difference?
Yeah, it is for me. I really messed it up. When I went to Sweden, I did the wrong thing. I landed at 10 in the morning, and as soon as I got to the hotel, I just went to bed, and I slept all day long. And that was a real problem because once we hit Wednesday, we had all the media obligations, the open workouts, and I couldn't sleep during the day anymore, which was the cycle my body was on. And so before I fought Sakara, I had only slept for about 4 hours the 2 days prior to that fight. I had some real sleeping issues. And luckily, obviously, things transpired well for me. But I learned that lesson, and I waited at least, till nighttime before I went to bed last night. So Japan has been much easier than Sweden.
And here I am messing up your sleep schedule, so I apologize for that.
You're not. Ariel, I've been up since 3. I woke up at 3:15 wide awake. So
okay.
I'm going to do some reading. Yeah, I'm going to do some reading. I'll lay down for a little while longer. And then, the most important thing is that I'm up and active, I think, by about 10:30 in the morning. I'll warm up, and then I'll get a good sweat in around 1 p.m. this afternoon, which would be the time I'm fighting.
You were born in Tokyo, right?
I was. This is my first time. I was born at Yokota Air Base here in Tokyo, Japan. I have never been back. We left when I was about 7 months old.
Wow.
Or 7 months old, and so this is gonna be pretty cool.
So I mean, you don't have family there, right?
I don't. I was born on a military base. But my mom, she lived over here with my sister for a couple of years. And so she's told me all these different stories, and she's given me a little laundry list of, hey, try and get on the base, see this building. This is the hospital you were born. And,
wow.
She's told me stories. And as a child growing up, the Karate Kid was real popular. So when Karate Kid came out and I was born in Japan, I was the man. I was running around with my little headband on playing Daniel-san. So this is a pretty unique opportunity for me. And oh, by the way, it's my first time main eventing for the UFC, and I get to fight a guy like Wanderlei Silva. So I'll be a little nostalgic after after Saturday night's over.
Are you going to stick around after the fight to take it all in?
I am actually. We fight Sunday afternoon. They don't have me leaving till Monday afternoon.
Okay.
So I'll get a good amount of time to maybe do something that night and do some sightseeing, and then just to keep my body active, I'll probably get out and walk around Tokyo a little bit early evening this evening, just 'cause I don't want to sit in my hotel room the whole week. So we've got a pretty light week when it comes to media because they actually have the open workouts and the press conference on the same day this week.
Oh, okay. So again, I know you addressed this when this fight was announced, but I just want to talk about it briefly here for a second. This fight is happening at 205 pounds. You look very good at 185 since you dropped down. How much different is your fight week now because you get to walk around with 20 extra pounds?
It's going to be a difference for me. I mean, I did not put on any extra weight for this fight. I didn't feel the necessity to do that. I've always been strong. I've always been powerful, and I think speed is more important than size against a guy like Wanderlei. The only difference is now is that I don't have to drop. I drop around 22 pounds the week of the fight, so not having to do that is a major advantage for me. But I wanted to make sure that my body stayed the same size because who knows? If this all goes well, 6 weeks from now, I could get the call to fight again. I don't want to have to do a massive cut from 225 like I did the first time I made the cut. So this is, it's just one of those great fights where I considered a middleweight fight, but we just agreed not to cut the weight.
Is there a chance that you look really good on Saturday, Sunday morning, you feel good, and you're like, to heck with 185, I'm sticking around at light heavyweight?
No, no, just because with my style of fighting and the guys that give me the most difficulty, going up a weight class to then have to wrestle with heavier guys just doesn't make any sense for me. At middleweight, a lot of people try to neutralize me with wrestling and control against the cage, etc. I've worked very hard on defending that and not allowing that to neutralize my skills, and it makes sense for me to be a bigger, stronger individual to do that.
Did you get an explanation why this is happening at 205 since Wanderlei has also been fighting at 185?
I read an article before this fight was even talked about, and Wanderlei had said, I don't want to cut the weight anymore. I've been lifting a lot of weights lately. I've put on a lot of size. I feel good in this. I wanted to fight at 205. So when the UFC called and told me about this fight, I had a feeling, okay, I think they want me to fight it at 205 though, because I don't think Wanderlei wants to cut the weight. And at that time, all the other middleweights were matched up. All the top 10 middleweights were matched up, or they were injured. There was really nobody out there that I could see. The only fights that I could see me getting was maybe some up-and-comers where I didn't have a whole lot to gain from that fight. So, the Wanderlei Silva fight made sense, even if it was just a one-off at a weight class. I still consider it a middleweight fight. We've both been fighting at middleweight. That's where our most significant UFC wins are. So to me, in my mind, it's a middleweight fight. We just have a gentleman's agreement that we're not going to cut all the weight.
You've been talking about this fight for a couple of years now. It never materialized in the past. Why do you like this matchup so much?
Well, I think there's a certain aspect or a certain trait in fighters that I really admire, and Chuck Liddell had it. Chuck's the kind of guy that if you called him 4 days before a fight or 4 months before a fight, he just said yes. He said yes before he even knew the opponent, and he was going to come out and he was going to go for the win. And Wanderlei is, he's from that same breed of fighters. Well, and he's a guy that, when I was dreaming of one day even being a professional fighter and I was in the Marine Corps watching fights, he was a guy who I would watch fight, and he was just ferocious the way he fought, yet he was still very much a gentleman, very much a very nice guy outside of the octagon. I always admired that. And so, they asked me one day who would be your dream matchup, and that was a couple years. I said, it would be a dream come true to fight a guy like Wanderlei and be a part of that storied career. And so I didn't expect to get that call for this fight, but I did, and I think it was just really timing for both of us. And here I am.
Very shrewd move on his part, because when this fight was first talked about, he said he didn't want it to take place in the U.S. because he was afraid he was going to get booed since you're beloved here in the United States. Now it's happening in his old stomping grounds, Japan, Saitama Super Arena, site of many of his great pride moments. I mean, he kind of turned the tables on you, right?
Oh, he absolutely did. He did. And when you're a guy like Wanderlei Silva and you've done as much as you have for the sport, he deserves to do that, and I'm proud to come back here and fight him, and I'm happy that he gets that moment. I am sure these fans are anxious and awaiting his arrival, and the atmosphere is going to be very, very cool. Well, Sunday morning for me, Saturday night for you guys in the U.S.
Do you think you'll get booed?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that's, from what I understand the Japanese fans to be like, I don't believe that that's just their style at all. I think they'll appreciate me. I think they'll appreciate the way that I fight. And, they'll appreciate the fact that I'm going to go out there and try and finish this fight.
Some of this talk has died down as of late, but every time Wanderlei fights, and I expect it to come up as the fight approaches, there's talk that this could be his last fight, that he isn't the same fighter that he once was. Do you think there's a chance you may be fighting Wanderlei in his last fight? Could you retire him?
I would never want to say I'm retiring him. I do think that maybe this could be his last fight. Being that it is in Japan, I don't believe he needs the money anymore. I just believe he does it simply out of the love of it. I would never say I could retire Wanderlei Silva. I think, coming from me, that may be deemed as disrespectful, but it could be. However, I haven't thought of that because every fight that I watch him, you hear people say he's not the same fighter, but even in the fights he loses, he still hurts his opponent. You watch him fight Rich Franklin. There were moments that some referees would have stopped that fight. Even when he lost to Chris Lieben in a quick fight, he hit Chris Lieben with a punch that I believe really stunned Chris. And then Chris came up with an uppercut and ended the fight. So he is still very dangerous, and no matter how old Wanderlei Silva is, he still throws very, very hard punches and kicks.
Do you think, though, he is as dangerous today as he was 4 years ago?
No, I don't. He's still very dangerous, but no, I don't think he could absorb the same amount of punishment that he was able to 4 years ago.
Very honest answer, and we appreciate that. Now, are you no longer with Team Jackson? Jackson Winklejohn, I should say.
I am not. Obviously 2012 was a year that I am so happy to close the door on, and not that, we're forgetting about the trials and tribulations that year, but that was by far the toughest year of my mixed martial arts career. And so, I gave the typical answers, best training camp of my life, blah, 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 blah. I was full of it. I had to create a camp out of nothing in Atlanta, and it was a difficult time for my family. And just being honest, there were things in my life that were going on that were much more important than fighting that I had to devote my focus to over fighting. Yet I still had to fight because I got to pay the bills. And so since then, though, I have been able to put together something very special in Atlanta that allows me to be a full-time father as well as a full-time fighter. And that's very important to me. And I've brought some guys in now where I was, kind of my own head coach. Now, I've got 5 or 6 head coaches, at my gym in Atlanta. And I'm very fortunate that some people relocated and moved to Atlanta, in late 2012. And that really helped me prepare for this fight. And so I am full-time training out of Atlanta.
Who are your coaches now?
So I have Rodrigo Artillero, who used to coach on The Ultimate Fighter with Vitor Belfort. He moved from Las Vegas. Raymond Jordan, who's a 2-time All-American from University of Missouri, was an Olympic alternate on the wrestling team in the Olympics last year. He moved to Atlanta. Jeff Bedard's another wrestling coach of mine. And then Manu Intal is my striking coach. He's a 6-time Muay Thai world champion from over in Thailand. And then Juan Carnero, or Jucao, as he was known when he fought in the UFC. He's one of Bigfoot's head coaches. He lives in Atlanta. He's one of my full-time coaches as well. So, and then obviously I train with, Douglas Lima, the Lima brothers, Clint Hester, and all the Asunciao brothers. So there's a lot of guys that used to go to Coconut Creek to train, that used to go to different places, New York City to train for their training camps. We all lived in Atlanta, but we all would go elsewhere for our training camps and just train with each other in between. And finally, we just decided to all train together and combine to move some people to the area to help us all train for our fights.
And are you cool with Mike and Greg now?
Absolutely. Mike Winklejohn's a guy that I'll always, he was more than a coach to me. He helped create me as a coach, and I miss him every day of my career. He's a phenomenal coach. Me and Greg have a great relationship. There's no issues there whatsoever. It's just one of those things where, there was a death in the family, of violent and sudden death. And so I needed to be home. I needed to be with my wife. I needed to be with my kids. I support her mom. I needed to be with her mother, who had just lost a son. And I at the time it was very difficult for me to spend 8 weeks in Albuquerque. As a father, I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. They go to school, they have soccer games, they do gymnastics. When I'm in Albuquerque, I don't see any of that. I miss that stuff. I was spending thousands of dollars to fly home every other weekend. I would try and fly them to Albuquerque for 2 weeks at a time, which means I got to pull them out of school to do that. It wasn't a feasible way to do business for the rest of my career as my kids got older. And so this was a move made out of necessity.
We were in Anaheim this past weekend for UFC 157, and it seemed like every interview, either I brought it up or a fighter brought it up, the talk of the cuts in the UFC, right? It seems like it's over everyone's head. And a lot of guys, it felt like, for me, on the undercard especially, were fighting with a sense of urgency. We saw some great performances and maybe different kind of performances had this not been hanging in the air. I don't think by any means you're in danger of any of that, but let's be honest, you are coming off a loss, and it's a very competitive time in the UFC. Does this change your mentality going into this fight?
Absolutely. Not only that does it change my mentality, the fact that, coming off a loss, but the UFC put me in a main event. They've put me in several co-main events. They've put me in main events before, and I got injured. And so I take that responsibility very serious. And so for me, I think it's very important that I go out there and fight that way. But, look, they made a statement. With John Fitch being cut, it doesn't matter who you are, what your name is, what you do, or if you're marketable or not. When you get to a certain aspect of your career and you start making decent money, if you don't perform, there's somebody else who will. And that's no different than the civilian world. I mean, you know just as well as these other fighters, the economy's tough in America right now, and there's a lot of people getting cut from their jobs as well. We're not the only ones in the fight industry.
How do you foresee this fight playing out?
It depends on what Wanderlei comes out, but I suspect it'll be the Wanderlei we've seen in recent years, where he's a little bit more retreating in the first round, comes forward in the second round, looking to counterpunch with a big right hand. Regardless, I'm going to set the pace right away, and I'm going to be aggressive for 5 rounds. If it goes 5 rounds, we're both going to need plastic surgery. I suspect it'll go no more than 3, and somebody's going to be unconscious at the end of this fight.
You comfortable going 5 rounds?
Absolutely comfortable. Very, yeah. I mean, I did 9 last Thursday.
Wow.
And collapsed, so I'm very comfortable going 5 rounds. I'll look like a completely different person if I go 5 rounds with Wanderlei, as will he.
Well, I cannot wait for it. As I mentioned, one of the best free cards UFC has put on. I'm not just saying that because I work for Fuel. I mean, Mark Hunt, Stefan Struve, Gomi Sanchez, Kim Ciar. I mean, and this main event, it's a great card. The undercard is great as well. Brian Stann versus Wanderlei Silva from the famous Saitama Super Arena, site of so many great fights. So cool to have some of these old Pride guys fighting on these cards again, and a great opportunity for you. Japan's own Brian Stann. I hope they play that up so they show you some love over there. Enjoy the moment, Brian, and most importantly, again, I know you woke up a little early, but I really do appreciate you coming on at this hour, and we cannot wait for the fight on Saturday.
My pleasure, buddy. We'll see you soon.
All right, there he is, the All-American Brian Stann, stopping by from Tokyo, Japan.